the Wiggly Podcast. Let your iPod bloom.
Welcome, listener, to podcast number 39 from the Wiggly Sofa. I'm Heather from Wiggly Wigglers.
And I'm Richard from Wiggly Wigglers.
And we're joined by...
Farmer Phil from the farm.
And... and your sidekick?
Toast the dog from the farm.
And we've had lots going on this week at Wiggly Wigglers, but the first thing that we must go to is the little owl story. Because, Richard, you listened to the podcast last week and you diagnosed a small problem.
Well, I kind of thought, I thought it was a tawny, in actual fact. I mean, it could be proved wrong, but the reason that I'm pretty adamant that it is a tawny is because I've listened to exactly the same noises for over several nights now at home. Get a lot of tawnies at home, and they're kind of fluttering around the banks and landing on the shed roofs and chitter-chatting to one another, and it is exactly the same sound. So, I kind of think they're probably young tawnies that are coming out at the same kind of time every night, landing on the roof, communicating with one another.
So young ones make that sound, and then the older ones go twit-to-woo, don't they?
Twit-to-woo. Well, it's funny people say twit-to-woo, but in actual fact, usually it's the one owl that goes twit and the other owl that goes twoo. Yeah, and that's why you tend to have that noise. But that's how because they do communicate between each other. They're quite vocal birds, and they are relatively sociable, actually.
And you saw one this morning, didn't you?
I did. I was walking the dogs this morning. As I went round the track as a tawny, but there was a massive clap of thunder, and the dogs went a bit crackers, barking up into a tree. I'm not sure what they were barking at, but I think it may have been a squirrel, or it may have been the owl. But anyway, a big tawny came down and shot in under the arch of all the overhanging branches and clattered into a couple of hazel boughs and dropped down into the dingle below me. Yeah, lovely sight.
And are tawnies under threat?
No, I think they're doing quite well. I think they're doing well in most places. It all depends if they can do well if they've got plenty of nest sites and plenty of food. So they like areas where there are lots of voles. If there's farmland with good buffer zones around the hedgerows, some set aside. But tawnies do tend to hunt a lot in woods as well.
They like grass seed, Rich, because there's lots of mice and voles in grass seed, and they love it.
And they're in the barns here as well, aren't they? So we've talked about them before in the barns here. But nesting sites are probably one of the most difficult things for owls because they do like large dead trees in order to make their nests in. But people can help by putting up tawny tubes in suitable places.
Yeah, but they've got no bottom in them, have they?
They've got a bottom in, they've just got no top.
Right.
But you put them at between, 45-degree angle is pretty good.
It's a strange thing, isn't it?
Well, it's just, I suppose it's something to replicate the hollow bough. And you can strap them underneath a bough. I'll use some tree ties, something like that, cable ties. And then if it's in the right situation, there's every chance an owl will use it. So,
our little owl was in fact a tawny.
Yeah, tawny.
And we have let Sam and Alex know. So thank you to Alex for that recording last week. We were wrong, it was a tawny, but thank you. So this week we've had just tons of interviews, and the first one is with James Hewitson Brown, who I had an opportunity to chat to at the BASP Day, and he's going to tell us all about wildflower turf. Right. So we'll do that first, Ricardo.
Excellent.
Right then, James, we're in the Wiggly Garden and we're surrounded by, do you call yourself BOSPs?
BOSPs.
B-A-S-P?
BASPs, I suppose.
Oh, BASPs, right. Well, and so tell me what you are.
I am a farmer that has come here to visit this wonderful farm and see your grass seed, which we produce at home, but we've diversified into turf production.
Fine. So you're James, our secret turf man, who we ask about all these questions about wildflowers and stuff like that.
Yes, I do my best to answer them.
Well, what the Wiggly customer will want to know is how you grow that turf. Not giving away any of your farmer trade secrets.
No. We developed a soilless turf, so we don't sow the fields. We produce it on an impermeable membrane using compost, and we've been doing that for a few years, but decided that we could do a wildflower turf using the same method, which is not very easy to do on the soil-based method. So we've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years, trialling varieties and generally working on it, and think we've got something now that we now sell to you.
And what advantage has that got over conventional turf production methods?
Well, it's a quick turnaround would be one advantage, and because the compost we use is inert and clean, we don't get weeds in it, so that makes for a good quality lawn turf, but it also allows us to do this wildflower system. And one of the big advantages for the wildflower system is that, unlike conventional turf, we don't need to rely on a long time to create a turf that you can lift and handle. Because it's on the impermeable membrane, the roots just knit together because they can't grow into the soil and make basically a sort of carpet-like turf that's very strong. You can pick it up from one corner, it won't fall to bits. And with the wildflowers, that's important because we sow at a very low seed rate, so they're not highly competitive, and the wildflowers which aren't very competitive have a chance to get established and get going.
And the turf industry has taken a bit of stick over the years for soil depletion. So does this get rid of that issue?
Well, I've got to be careful what I say because one of the BASP members is a turf producer. So, but actually, I think to be fair to them, they've got their machinery so efficient now that they don't take a huge amount of soil. But in our case, certainly there's zero removal of topsoil, and we use as much sustainable compost as we can in our system. So it is, yes, environmentally friendly from that point of view. Yeah.
Very diplomatic, love.
Yeah, I've got to be careful.
And what about water? Because you must use just gallons of water.
Yeah, because of the membrane, if you don't water it, it dries out and dies, which is a bit of a trade-off because, I mean, because of the quick turnover, we get a few more crops a year, and the end result is beneficial, especially with the wildflower, the biodiversity that creates. But certainly we water a lot. We've developed a system whereby we try and reuse some of the water that we're putting on the turf, filter it again and put it into a reservoir we've built, and then reuse that. So we're doing our best to keep it going.
Fantastic. Thank you, James.
That's okay.
Just remind us, Phil, what a BASP or a BOSP is.
A BASP, and I'm a BASP, is the British Association of Seed Producers, which is a national collection of farmers who grow principally grass seed, but also cereals and other seeds for seed, so for other people to plant, either as turf or as an agricultural crop for other farmers.
And we had the opportunity to go and see James's farm down in Hampshire last year, didn't we?
That's right. He's got a pretty slick operation going down there. He's right at the front of technology and efficiency. He's right on the money.
Mm.
And he's planted up an area by his pond with his wildflower turf, which he tells me this year is looking particularly stunning.
So that's a kind of foolproof way of ensuring you don't get too many thistles and docks and plantains and whatnot in around your pond, I guess, after you've excavated it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And talking about ponds, we've got our pond day coming up soon, haven't we? Our Wiggly Pond Day.
We
part
have
of our
indeed,
series of,
Ricardo.
Wiggly courses.
We reviewed your last course last week when you weren't here. You heard that?
I heard some of it, yeah. So, that was good. It went really well. That was a great... Phil talked too much, but other than that...
You didn't walk much, though, did you, Rich?
No, I didn't walk. We intended to walk further.
Yeah.
But it's because Phil's far too interested for his own good. Folks were asking him loads of questions and we didn't get anywhere near as far as I would have liked. But never mind. But they really enjoyed themselves. And again, fantastic weather, great day. Lots of opportunity for people that otherwise wouldn't get those opportunities. And even I learned something new every time Phil's rattling on about bits and bobs.
And I gather in my sub-Saharan monoculture there was even some wildlife to be seen.
Yeah, there was actually. That was that was all right. I did eat my words. I brought in a whole bunch of different wildflowers that I'd grubbed up from the hedgerow on my little dog walking session in the morning before I came over to here. And I also brought a cinnabar moth caterpillar because there's loads of ragwort at home and there's loads and loads of cinnabar moth caterpillars all over it. So I brought it in for a bit of a competition to see if they could identify it. And they couldn't, in actual fact, which is funny because that was one of those caterpillars that when you're a child, everyone knows that those are cinnabar moth caterpillars, bright yellow and black striped creatures. And I said, there's no way you'll see one of those around here. So we walked up into the farmyard and we were looking at thistles and birdsfoot trefoil and a hedge woundwort and all these bits and pieces. And I clocked some ragwort. And I said, there's some ragwort. And I said, but what you probably won't find are any cinnabar moth caterpillars. Blow me. Someone said, Richard, what's this? And it was a cinnabar moth.
Oh.
Just in that little corner. So they were around, so they obviously, one or two around here as well, which is great. And that was really good to see, in actual fact. I was quite chuffed that there were one or two around. I think that's the space that you leave, isn't it? That patch going up into the fields there. So a nice little bit of set aside. that obviously provides a nice bit of refuge for all sorts of inverts.
So give us the lowdown briefly, on what will happen on Pond Day.
So what tends to happen is folks turn up, nice coffee, chit-chat, introductions, and we try and make it as practical as possible so that it's really hands-on. So what people will be able to get from the end of the day is a good insight on how to build their own pond, the kind of creatures that they're likely to see in their pond, ways and means of planting up a pond with good native species of aquatic and riparian plants. And they'll also get a reasonable insight into species identification. So we'll look at backswimmers and water boatmen and water skimmers and whirligig beetles and dragon and damselfly nymphs and newt larvae and all those kind of things that you really liked catching when you were a kid, but you've kind of forgotten all about since you've become an adult. So that's really exciting, and pond dipping, that's probably one of the most exciting elements of one of our Wiggly Open days as well, aren't they?
You're going to have a lovely day, aren't you?
Yeah, great day, yeah, it's a brilliant day. So, and we'll get to compare different types of ponds, so different ecosystems. We'll look at the conventional garden wiggly pond, and in actual fact there's probably more life in that pond than there is in the natural glacial cirque, as Phil talked about previously, because there's probably too much waterfowl on there, too much eutrophication, So we'll look at that. Then we'll hopefully, depending on how much time we've got, we'll wander up into the woods and check out that pond in the woods. And I know that pond we're going to have as part of our family day. We're going to frape up there hopefully and have a nice big family picnic up there. So and then people get to compare different environments and be able to check out the life that exists in those environments. There will be similarities, certainly.
Well, the date for the Pond Day is the 19th of July. And then the family day's booked out in August, I know already. But for all details of the courses, just go to our website. And Country Living actually sent a spy on your course earlier in the year, I think right. Worms Day.
Worms Day,
so Christine came along from Country Living magazine, which is the UK's leading countryside magazine, and she's going to write a review on the course in the September issue of Country Living. And they phoned me up just the other day for some photos to go alongside it, so we'll see what they say.
Good job I bored her to death that day.
Which photos did you send them? You didn't. I wasn't consulted.
You know the one that you look like the mad professor?
No. Well, dodgy. That goes out to a big audience, isn't it?
So there we are.
Yeah, that'd be good. Be interesting to see what she says. She said she hadn't said lots of nice things, but you never know.
You never know. And yesterday we had a great day, didn't we, Phil?
Yeah, we did. Jan and Fran from EM came to see us yesterday morning, and we were talking about the latest developments in their products and our products, the bokashi. Jan, who is the scientist of the party, inspected my bokashi production and duly prescribed it to be excellent.
Excellent.
So we were chuffed with that.
Yeah.
And he gave us a talk
really
on
good.
Water. Rach and I
gave Rach and Hev a science lesson, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't go much, really.
I did say on a flip chart yesterday, we had a Wiggly meeting, didn't we? And you said, do you know what that is, means, Rich? I said, yeah. Lying through my teeth.
Well, Phil said at the end of it that Jan had explained why snowflakes were snowflakes.
Right.
But he hadn't actually mentioned snowflakes, so Rach and I were
Because Jan's a complete
puzzled.
scientist, he forgot to actually put the practical bit on, but what he was describing was why snowflakes always have 6 sides.
Right.
But he didn't say that.
That is why it is.
That's right.
Anyway,
fantastic.
I did manage to get to ask him a key Wiggly question, so we'll just go over to that interview. I'm here with Jan and Fran from EM Limited. Thank you very much for coming, Jan. And the question that everyone wants to know is, how can those EM ceramics possibly work? To make ceramic, you have to get to a temperature of something like 2,000 degrees, which I think would then zap all those friendly bacteria in those ceramics. And yet, I know from my own experience that Monty's fish tank stays clearer for miles longer when I put them in. So I know they work, but I cannot see how.
Okay, I can imagine that you can't understand it, because it was very difficult for me to understand it in the beginning as well. They teach me in Japan how it works.
Okay.
If you want to understand, we should go first to your computer. The center of your computer is a ship, and the center of the ship is silicon. Silicon is actually the secret of EM ceramics, because the base of EM ceramics are clay minerals. And if you go into clay minerals and you look to them, then the center of clay minerals is silicon. Silicon is something what can store information. And that is actually the word you should pronounce it, not information, no, information. What we do with ceramics is as follows. First, you take a certain kind of clay minerals. This clay minerals you mix with bacteria and feed, and then you leave them alone for several months on anaerobic conditions. And then these clay minerals are fermented. A bacteria is something like you and me, we all resonate. This resonance actually is information. And this resonance brings the silicon structure of clay mineral in resonance. And then the trick comes, you bake them. If you bake those silicons, all the bacteria will die off. Very simple. But the resonance, the information is in the clay mineral. So actually the information, the resonance of the bacteria is taken in by the silicon structure. So if you put back those silicon structures, like the clay minerals, which are baked, and you put them in your aquarium, then you will see that actually this information of the bacteria goes back to the water, and you bring the water in formation. So that's the whole trick.
Jan, that's all well and good, but how the heck have you proved this?
I think your fish already proved it in the aquarium. We did a lot of research work on it, and you can see it work in many fields, so it works.
Thank you very much. So there we go, that was Jan and Fran from EM, and they've got lots of things coming up, including a conference in Bavaria in September.
That's right, I think I'm going to that, aren't I?
Are you rich?
I think so. Well, I hope so. You did say, do I want to go the other day? And I thought, well, I definitely want to go to that. But, it seems logistically possible.
Trip off?
Yeah, trip off, yeah.
Drop of the old Bavarian
That'd be really interesting.
motion lotion, do you think, Rich?
It's on an island in the middle of a big lake. So I think it's an hour from Munich. I want an adventure. 2 days conference. Be really interesting. Well, it could be good. Go either way, I suppose. But
I want to go to the podcast conference.
Where's the podcast? California.
I think so. Yes, California. Yeah.
I'll go and drive my tractor.
Anyway, you've been up to something very exciting, haven't you?
I've done my first Skype interview, but I should say that as yet Michael hasn't sort of had chance to get at it. So I should have the reservation that he may throw up his hands in dismay and say, what can I do with this rubbish? But anyway, what happened was that I made one of my blunders on the subject of TB, and Melanie Matthews, who works for a TB charity called TB Alert, which is actually more human TB based, pulled me up on it. And so we thought we'd invite her onto the podcast and let her put my errors right, which she did, and came up with quite a lot of other interesting stuff on the latest thoughts on TB, both in humans and animals. So we look forward to that. It was good.
So much so that, of course, being Farmer Phil, his interview is 18 minutes long. And so that will be a special podcast next week, all being well, because we're on holiday next week. So either podcast 40 is a holiday next week, or it's the Phil interview with Melanie Matthews on TB, a Skype interview. So hope you tune into that, listener. And meanwhile, we've got a treat for you, because Ricardo has been down on the farm with Ali on a quad bike.
Yeah, that was
Richard,
good.
you can't drive a quad bike.
Well, Alison did say, after I got on it, she said, have you driven a quad before? And I said, no. So little Alison, she got on the side, she was riding pinion, and she held on a grim death, and off we went. And when we had a sheepdog on one side snapping at the traffic as we were trying to get across the main road, and little Alice on the other side, and we went fraping down to the river to see the couple of willow trees. It was a fantastic spot, and the whole of these trees was encased in a web, a silky web, and in amongst the silky web there were nests, and they were absolutely inundated with tiny little caterpillars, chrysalists, and little white micromoths, and they were all hatching. And around them there were swarms of tiny parasitic wasps. Now, whether those wasps were parasitising on the moths or on the pupa, I wasn't sure, but it was a just an amazing situation, you know. And I've never seen that before. I've seen the little sort of silken nests around the catkins of those willows, but I've never seen those kind of moths anywhere near that abundance. And I didn't know what they were. I had no idea what these are.
That's why we sent you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I had no idea. But in my defence, I think there are something like 2,000 different species of moths in the UK. I think there are something like 1,200 different species of micromoths, of which these were. However, Alison got on the Google and found what they were, and they're willow ermine moths.
Right.
About 20 mils long. And apparently they are fairly localised, but they are incredibly abundant in certain places at certain times of the year. So spasmodic reproduction, but they can be hugely prolific in some instances, which of course is what they were last night.
What do they look like then, Nick?
Well, those guys were probably about 20 mils long, 15, 20 mils long, white with tiny little black spots. And obviously they hold their wings along the length of their bodies, and they had quite long antennae, and their antennae were really animated, you know, and they were twiddling around all the time. They were obviously hatching and moving off to pastures new. Great.
So more active at night then, or?
That was early afternoon, early evening, late afternoon, wasn't it, yesterday? So they were moving around in the daytime. But I imagine those species will probably be more active at night. You do tend to find micromoths are more active at night. Some of the larger species of moths, tiger moths, for instance, like your scarlet tigers, and then of course your burnet moths, you know, your cinnamons and your 6 and 5 spot burnets. They're more active in the daytime. But these guys were obviously hatching in the daytime, which is why they were leaving. But I imagine what they probably do is leave those nesting areas and go and find somewhere quiet to rest up before going and doing whatever they do at night.
So, vroom vroom! It's the Ricardo Roving Reporter. On
great.
4 wheels.
That was really good.
Oh.
We're down by the banks of the Wye. We've just driven Alison down here. She's been clinging onto the quad by her fingernails. And we did get halfway, and Alison said, well, have you driven one of these before, Rich? And I said, no. But we got here, and Alison showed me this amazing... There are 2 willows, and they're absolutely plastered in what look like ermine moths, but I don't think they are ermine moths because they seem too small, don't they?
Yeah, they seem a lot smaller now that some of them have hatched out, haven't they?
They have. And what does it look like, Alison? There are all these tiny nests, aren't
Well,
there?
there's these massive nests of like green caterpillars, but on the ends, because they're changing, they're going black, in a mass of cobwebs. But that one in the middle of the tree, look, it's huge.
This is huge, isn't it? I mean, it is absolutely massive. And what's interesting, there are all these... You see all these tiny little parasitic wasps? You see all these tiny little wasps, look, and they're trying to infiltrate the nest. So whether they're trying to catch some live caterpillars or lay their eggs inside the caterpillars, but in actual fact, if you look on the outside of the nest, there are tiny little casters, aren't there?
Oh, right.
And I wonder whether those are the casters from these tiny little parasitic wasps.
But this is obviously what
But
they
these
are.
I mean, there are
here.
tens of thousands of them, aren't there? And they're micromoths of sorts. They're probably, what are they, 15 mil long? 15 mil long, white with tiny little black spots. Fantastic little things. We'll have to find out what they are. I've no idea what they are just to look at, to say, but I can certainly try and look them up tonight and find out what they are. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. Have you seen anything like this before?
No, never like this.
Yeah.
And the whole trunk has got a huge cobweb surrounding the whole surface of it.
It has.
If you look up,
Oh, wow.
it's all surrounded with cobwebs from top to bottom of the
That
tree.
is amazing. And how
every
tall is this tree? Even from the trunk, look, right the way up.
Every
it's
little
covered.
crevice has got these tiny, tiny caterpillars and moths all over it.
Yeah, the whole trunk. What's that? How many feet is that? It's got to be 25 foot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
25 foot, and it's just completely encapsulated in a cobweb. That is incredible. No, I can safely say I've never seen anything like this before. So this must be a good year for this particular species. I don't know, it's because of the dry weather we've had. I don't know, but yeah, it's astonishing. Absolutely amazing. So we'll have to look it up, won't we?
Yeah,
Find
but
out what they
hopefully some of the listeners will.
You never know. People that hopefully they'll be able to see something like this. Any of the keen anglers out there that have been walking along the riverbank have seen anything like this, and it'd be great if they did let us know. But we'll have to find out anyway. Well, thanks for bringing me down here, Al.
It's all right. It's a good ride. Thank you.
All the girls say that. Cheers.
Thanks, Alison. That was really good. And I guess that's a wrap for this week. It's been really interesting, isn't it?
Is that a compost wrap?
That is a wrap. Thanks, guys, and I look forward to next week's Phil's debacle.
Hopefully.
Well, it should be all right. My phone went off once and Melanie's went off twice during the interview, so Michael will no doubt be in a fearsome temper by the time he's done it, but we'll look forward to it.
That'll be great. It'll be excellent. Cheers, Phil. And that's bye from me.
And me.
And me.
Cheers. She said she'd say lots of nice things, but you never know.
You never know. And yesterday we had a great day, didn't we, Phil?
Did we? What did we do yesterday?
And yesterday we had a...
It was that good. That was that good, wasn't it? What did we do yesterday?
Jan and Fran.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's a long time since yesterday.